underway another night's edition of the Smoke and Mirrors Radio Hour. My name is Jay Weidner, and we're on Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 on the West Coast, 9 to 10 on the East Coast, and everywhere else in between. Tonight, we have a really special guest, someone that I really, really admire, and just an all-around great person, Neale Donald Walsch, the famous author of the quasi-gazillion-selling book Conversations with God. Great book. He's written so many books since then that I don't even know where to start. How are you doing, Neale?
Well, thank you, Jay. I'm doing great. Having a wonderful day and moving through a wonderful time in my life. I hope it's the same with you.
It is. In fact, I love late fall, so I'm a happy man at the moment. So, Neale, you were in the film that we just finished at Sacred Mysteries, Infinity, The Ultimate Trip, and we've been showing it all around the country, and everyone that we show it to, we do focus groups and things, and your performance is the one that most people mention as their favorite. And you tell, a fairly serious story of a near-death experience in the film that's quite moving. And I was just wondering, for people who haven't seen the film, because it really isn't out until Thanksgiving, what happens when you die?
Well, I think the first thing that happens is that you realize you haven't died in the classical sense of the word, that you are continuing to live. You're still alive. You're in the sense that you're aware of yourself. You're aware of the presence of your consciousness and of your self-consciousness. That is, you know who you are. And what happens simply is that you realize that you're not your body. That is, you experience yourself continuing to live, but in my case, looking right down on your own physical form. And there's a moment, just a brief moment of puzzlement, where you try to think, what am I experiencing here, and how can I be looking at myself? And then you realize that the self that you're looking at looks different from what it ever looked like before. That is, it looks almost, this is a strange way to put it, lifeless, in the sense that it looks like a lump of clay. It doesn't really look like who you imagine yourself to look like, or what you imagine yourself to look like. And so the first thing that happens is you see that and you wonder, wait a minute, how can that be there and I be here? Until you realize two things almost simultaneously. One, I'm not that. I'm not my body. And number two, I'm not dead. That is, I continue to exist even though my body is lying there and I am in consciousness somewhere over here hovering over it. And that's the first thing that happened to me, was this astonishing awareness that life was going to go on. And then I hate to say this because it's so trite and so mundane in the sense that it's been said now 5 million times. But in fact, my experience was, as many have reported, I simply turned around and flew out of the room in which I was lying, and found myself racing down a dark hallway or tunnel-like structure at insane speed toward a light at the end of the tunnel. This is an experience that many people have described, and I had an identical experience to that. And when I got to the light at the end of the tunnel, I realized that I was in the presence of what I would loosely call divinity, or, if you please, God, although it did not have a particular form, but rather felt like an energy or an essence, an essential essence that I could not see in any particular shape or form, but I could feel just incredible love and warmth and a sense of presence. And those are the first three things that happened to me following my release, if you please, from the body, which I consider to be a near-death or an out-of-body experience.
Yeah, it's strange. So if we're not our body, and what are we? I know this is kind of a strange question, but what are we when we are not our body?
I think that we are. I hate to use a woo-woo word, but I think that we are consciousness, pure consciousness. I think we are energy, the energy of life itself. I think we are a gathering of energy that vibrates at a particular frequency and that identifies itself in a particular way at a particular point in the space-time continuum. I think that the process of death, I write about it extensively in a book called Home with God, is a three-part process. In the first part of the process, we realize we're not our body. In the second part of the process, we realize that we're not our mind. And in the third part of the process, we realize we aren't even what some people would refer to as our soul. That is, we are neither body, mind, nor soul, but all three combined. And when you ask what are we, I think that what we are is energy, pure energy that vibrates in a particular frequency at a particular place and time, and that identifies itself in a particular way, in my case, as the physical manifestation known as Neale Donald Walsch, but in the non-physical state, simply ultimately identifies itself as part of a much larger essential energy unit that some people might call God or divinity.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we are. I think we are the fundamental energy of life. I think we are composed of the fundamental energy of life itself, or I might just simply call it raw consciousness, that which is aware of itself.
It's almost as if the universe is filled with this invisible conscious energy, and that it manifests on Earth the way it does, the way it wants to manifest is like human beings and animal forms and plant forms, and that there's this incredible dance between forms of consciousness and that most people take for granted, but which is really quite an amazing event when you think about it.
I agree with you, and I do think that life tends to coagulate itself, if you please, in clumps of energy that vibrate at different frequencies, different rates of speed, which produces physical manifestations of an infinite number of formulations. And it's the complexity of this, I hate to use the word, but this matrix of interactive energy units is really almost beyond comprehension. Consider a snowflake. We are told by science that there are no two snowflakes alike. I mean, what a phenomenal statement. No two snowflakes alike. And in an average snowfall, there might be billions upon billions upon billions of snowflakes just in one snowfall, and no two alike. That is how remarkably simple and yet complex at the same time the creative process of physicality is. And so we see that the intermingling of the various aspects of that energy complex is just beyond comprehension in terms of its own complexity and sophistication. We are living in a remarkably sophisticated system of life that is created by interactive energies acting upon each other. And it's indescribable. I mean, I don't know anybody who can actually specifically describe it except in the broadest general terms, such as those that I'm using here.